and you'll tell us about the history of South African political party funding and kind of give us some context on that before taking us through some of the recent changes that have been made to the political party funding laws.
Sure, they're sort of small developments, but I think it's worth commenting on because it's actually, you know, it's party funding has a major effect on our history that I think we have yet to be aware of. But just to give the sort of background is that, obviously in exile, the ANC was entirely funded by foreign powers. Its main supporters were the Soviet bloc, and then from the late 70s onwards, Sweden became an ever-increasing supporter. And then, with the fall of the collapse of Soviet communism, then Sweden, the Soviet bloc falls away. Sweden is Sweden and Norway. Then are the sort of two core organizational funders of the ANC. And at that stage, their organizational budget's about what was then $30 million a year. You can times that by 40 for the contemporary rand value. So that's about 1.2 billion rand a year from the two Nordic states. And then Mandela himself, he goes fundraiser. Every trip he makes, he tries to raise funds for the ANC. Does it quite successfully, but those are ad hoc donations, and so but he gets, from someone like Suharto of Indonesia, $10 million in hard cash. So the ANC, but the core funding is the Nordic states. The Nordic states tell the ANC then, look, when you become a democracy, this funding stops because we're supporting you, obviously, because South Africa's not, a white minority state. But once a democratic context is coming, we're going to cut off this essentially sort of around 1 billion rand in contemporary values. And without that, the ANC as an organization is going to be without any money. So they then say, okay, what are we going to do? Well, we need to build up our own funding flows. And to do that, they set up something called the Barter Trust. And the Barter Trust then sets up the Tebe Investment Corporation. And that's going to be the funding vehicle for the ANC when the Nordics cut off funding. And it starts trying to get into various business deals. Even at that early stage, one of them was MTN. It wanted to share in MTN. That didn't work out, and the ANC interest came in via Jonik later on. That's where Ramaphosa comes in. And that's another story, but that's, I think, a big part of the fight with the United States is over MTN, which then later on goes into Iran and does business there, and that's the cause of a lot of our foreign policy issues. But that's another story. So the ANC through the 90s it remains almost totally foreign funded. But it's in 93 or so. It separates out its assets from the ANC as an organization. Its sort of assets, its capital is housed in the Barter Trust. The ANC as an organization just spends money. It doesn't have assets of its own. These are housed in the separate vehicle called the Barter Trust. Then later on, it sets up another sort of even more notorious trust is the Chancellor House Trust, which it sets up. And that then is positioned to profit from the mining charter, and then also later from those big Eskom contracts where Chancellor House gets its notoriety. It's cut into the Medupi deal and the Kusile deal. As a junior partner, it contributes nothing, but it's going to get a big share of those contracts. So the ANC's sort of funding is through its trusts, and there are other trusts, I think. Those are just the two we know about. It's I think the election campaign, certainly in 94, maybe later, is done through another trust, because the ANC as an organization is always running these large overdrafts, so it can't actually spend the money, funds on election campaigns, because if it did get money, the bank would say, well, thank you very much, that was needed to pay off the overdraft. So that's the sort of ANC in the past, very heavily reliant on overseas funding for its survival, but it's separated out itself between the organization, the ANC, and its trusts. So that's a sort of long story short. from about 98, the ANC starts, increasing. The state starts paying an increasing share of the ANC's sort of organizational budget, and because the ANC is a dominant party, it gets the bulk of state funding. So up until 2017, we have total secrecy about party funding. And then in 2017, I think there's a constitutional court case. Suddenly the ANC sort of announces this abrupt about turn and says, look, we're going to have we'll have total transparency. You can only, one legal entity, one person can only donate 15 million rand and no more than that to a political, I think a year and then any donation above 100,000 rand has to be declared.